Hello, my name is Paden on Clancy Fairbanks with Cornerstone Real Estate, and today we're doing some more horror stories. Some of those drippy, stinky, nasty horror stories that you guys can't seem to get enough of. So, the point of all of this, why are we listening and reading horror stories, is two reasons. One, it's entertaining. Super easy for the YouTube algorithm, super easy for me to make videos on, and just super interesting in general. Two, it's just to learn in general. The whole goal of all this is for you to understand the different kind of weirdness that can happen in real estate and some of the possible solutions you should have to try to fix that. Terrible real estate agents, terrible buyers, buying a home that's got a lot of problems that they aren't disclosing. You know, we talk about a lot of this stuff. We've had horror stories around them. So use this time to, one, be entertained. This can be a longer video, so maybe put it on while you're driving somewhere or whatever and whatnot. Two, try to learn if you're trying to buy or sell a house, some of the things that could possibly happen. Maybe some good questions to ask real estate agents. But before we jump into this, who's the sponsor of this video? It's me. I'm the sponsor, Paden on Clancy Fairbanks. So if you're looking to buy or sell a house, or you know somebody looking to buy or sell a house, or you're trying to find an agent anywhere in the United States, let me know. I can either try to refer you out, or if you live in Utah or southern Idaho or western Wyoming, maybe we can talk and I can help you list or buy or sell a home. But other than that, thanks for watching. Let's get right on into it. Interesting enough, this is the third time I'm trying to record this part. My dog was really hammering down on a bone. So, let's try this again. The first horror story we got is from somebody a little different, a title company. And it is unabashedly bashed, I think, is what it's supposed to be called. But, title agent. We had an investor wanting to sell some property to someone else, but there's something on the title, and we won't insure it. The purpose of title companies is that they'll make sure that your title is in free clear. It doesn't have any judgments or liens or stuff on it like that that's going to follow you after you purchase the home. So a mechanic's lien would be like they replace the roof on the home and the last sellers or the current sellers still owe $15,000 on that. They won't sell the house unless that mechanic's lien is free and clear, so that when you buy the house, you're not going to have a $15,000 lien on you immediately after you purchase it. This is what title companies do, is they clear all that up. But when our closing agent let them know it won't be happening, the seller tells the buyer that this is something title agencies do to get more money. And the email that he also sent to me, to my closing agent. This is another thing too, is so there's a lot of dishonesty in real estate in general, but it's baffling that people just like make up stuff sometimes that doesn't really make any sense. Because title companies are like the cheapest part of the process, and so them trying to add extra money, you could actually look at their charges and see where the extra money is coming from. But this is probably just them. It's probably a judgment on the property, something like that, that's going to take longer than 6 months to solve. And so they're like, look, we can't insure this because we don't know what this situation is going to pan out to be. And you might just have to sell it further in the future or once this judgment is passed or whatever it is. We don't charge extra. We don't charge extra for clearing title before closing. This wasn't something we were going to be able to clear anyway. My closing agent specifically told him that he could try to go somewhere else because it wasn't going to happen at our office. And somehow it was going to get us more money. Yeah. It is a pain in the butt, title companies, because they get thrown under the bus so often. We didn't close that deal. I've had sellers yell at my escrow people because they have to bring money to close. They somehow didn't realize they were going to have to pay off the balance of their mortgage. Yes, that's a pain in the butt as well, as you've got lenders and real estate agents that don't necessarily inform people of addendums or what an addendum means or their payoff and stuff like that, and then they get to closing, and it's the escrow officer or the title company that communicates to them these facts. And all of a sudden they're blaming the title company, saying, why are you guys making us do this? And it's like, it's not us making you do this. It's the lender that's requiring you to do this. It's the real estate agent that's tacking on these extra fees. The escrow officer doesn't have anything to do with it. They're just supposed to account for the funds, make sure the title is free and clear, and then disperse the funds. And some other nuanced pieces of it. But I get it. Title companies, once again, thrown under the bus all the time. Buyers who think they're going to close in 5 days, even though the owner of the house is dead and no probate has started. This is another big one. So if there's specific titles that make it so that if somebody passes away, they have to go to probate to make it so that it'll go to the next owner. The next owner will have full ownership of it. Because the person died, they got to provide a birth certificate and stuff like that. There's some ways to have titles that make it so that it'll transfer them to automatically, and you just need a death certificate. But people don't understand that. People don't understand the difference between the different vesting in homes. So it's just something super to always make sure you understand and be aware of. Last week we had a buyer file a dissolution 3 days before their closing. Dissolution, it sounds like that's them closing down their business or their LLC. They couldn't just wait. Their lender called flipping out because the loan approval was no good. This is not one of those things. Clients are unpredictable and they just do crazy stuff all the time. That last piece makes sense. It's a huge bummer, but kind of happens all the time. Last thing on the title company, they really do get thrown under the bus like constantly. And then on top of that, it's not their job to understand the lending piece of it and the real estate agent side of it. And people have unrealistic expectations and don't understand what title companies are for. So when you're using a real estate agent, ask them what title company you use them, ask them why you're using that title company, and make sure that you have at least a broad knowledge that you're using a title company that's good at their job, well priced, and stuff like that. Just good pieces of general advice. But going to client story number 1. This one is Mean Election 778, posted about 10 months ago. Current situation: real estate agent, married, decided to have an affair with a married mortgage broker while listing my house. Seems a little focused on other things at the moment. This is another one of those big ones that real estate's hard, especially if you have people that are so focused on their personal life, that are so focused on trying to get with the mortgage loan officer. It makes your life harder. And I feel like in general, real estate isn't as professional of a career or an industry as it really should be. There's just a lot of unprofessionalism in it. And there's things I'm unprofessional about, but I always try to make sure that my clients receive a similar level of care and respect on everything that they're trying to accomplish. And you communicate with them in a way that they're comfortable with, but also in a way that explains to them the entire process. And that you can't necessarily let your personal life start affecting your business life. You just can't, And so you see a lot of this stuff in real estate in general, because it's a lot of people who join the industry for the weird, wrong, dumb reasons, or because they're pretty people and they're just attracted to silly, stupid stuff like this. But now we're going to agent number 1. This is cowardice in sandwiches. I've had a few bad ones, but this one still irritates me when I think about it. One bright autumn day several years back, I got an online lead, a family looking to buy a house in one of my town's bedrooms communities. We looked at several houses, we got along famously, their kids liked me, I liked them. Finally, they found a house that seemingly loved. It was a short sale that looked like it was going to foreclosure, but they wanted to take a chance at getting it. So we wrote the offer and the seller accepted. Listing agent sent it off to the bank for approval, and I sent the paperwork to the title company. A while later, I get a call from my contact at title. Hey, cowardice and sandwiches buyers, earnest money deposit check bounced. Ooh, what? Yeah, came back in SF. I can't get a hold of them. WTF? Okay, let me call them. I called for weeks, even stopped by their current residence. They completely ghosted me. I never did find out what happened. They wound up buying some other houses the following summer with another agent. This is a hard piece of real estate, especially because you got to assume that she had a contract with them, but this is just what some buyers do in general. A lot of people don't treat real estate agents like they're people, partially because of the unprofessionalism and all that other stuff, and part of it is just because people treat real estate agents in a way that they wouldn't treat a typical professional, like ghosting them. There's so much craziness to that. You got to wonder, they didn't lose their earnest money because it bounced, but then how do you put in a cancellation for the purchase of that home? The agent probably just had to contact the sellers and be like, hey, this is what's happening, and they just kind of have to figure their way through it. That's why there's so much gray area in real estate. What do you do if an earnest money deposits and the buyers just never respond to any one of your texts? I haven't been in that situation. I hope that I'm not, but it's probably a call to the broker, a call to the listing agent. If it's before the due diligence deadline, you got to assume there's going to be some easier ways out of it. But what if it happened one day before closing, and all of a sudden their earnest money, they have their earnest money deposited it? What do you do with that earnest money if they don't respond back to it all? Probably it'll go to the sellers, but just an interesting, silly situation that I could really see a lot of agents getting into from not anything that's their fault in general. But now we're going to client number 2. Real estate agent misled us. Ooh. We hired a real estate agent on Monday. She came prepared with a presentation and her plan for selling her house for asking price. She explained that the total commission would be 6%, split between her and the buyer's agent. She said it would include professional staging and photography. We felt really great about it, and as staging was something we were hoping we would get with a realtor. We signed the listing agreement and went on our way. Fast forward to Friday, the stager comes All she does is basically tell us to declutter and to move our dining room table to be more aligned under our chandelier. She told us to put decor out as well. However, we are in the midst of moving out of state, so we packed all of our decor away. We were a bit confused because we thought a stager provided those things. Apparently not. The stager only gives suggestions and that's it. We asked our real estate agent about this because she led us to believe that the stager would stage our property for the open house. Our real estate agent then said that they can do virtual staging, but that's something that the photographer does. And if I wanted staging done, then I need to be pay out of pocket for my own third party. We are left disappointed that she didn't explain to us in the beginning. So we asked her if she was willing to negotiate and knock off 1% of her commission fee since there isn't any staging included. She has yet to respond to us. We feel a bit stuck because we signed the listing agreement and we feel like she wasn't transparent about the staging situation at all. Any advice? This is one of those things, a lot of listing agents, if you talk to them, if you feel like they're not providing the correct amount of service, will release you unconditionally from your contract. It's something you could probably see happening fairly often. The listing agent's problem was that she just didn't explain her services as in depth as she really should have, or she was trying to forcefully manipulate them so that she can get the listing agreement, get them under a contract of sorts, and then it makes it easier for her to keep the listing. Dishonest, but you see stuff like that fairly often in real estate. You especially see people who say they're going to sell their house for more than another agent and they have a decreased commission. They get the listing and then they sit on it, and if they can get 20 of those and only 4 or 5 of them close, it's still good money over a couple of months, So yes, the agent miscommunicated. They really should just talk to her and say, hey, we want you to release us unconditionally from this contract. If they really wanted to push it further, they could talk to the broker, explain the situation, and sell that they felt like they were misled. If they wanted to really, really push it further, they could file a complaint with their local board. There's a lot of different levels that they go to, but probably they're just going to say, hey, can you release us unconditionally from this contract? And yes, agents mislead or they communicate things in a salesperson-y way that their focus isn't necessarily on making sure you understand the process and what they're doing for you in an effective manner. Their goal is to try to get the listing. And yes, there's an inherent problem with that. But let's go to Agent 2. This one still has muchness, and it was posted 4 years ago, edited 4 years ago. Worst listing. Selling house for a divorcing couple. Was my first listing in real estate in 2006, right before the market crashed. Every week it was on a market, one of them would do something destructive to the house. After it went under contract, the husband got drunk and did donuts in the front and backyard and shredded almost every blade of grass. At the closing table, we had to physically separate the two of them. It was vicious from beginning to end. Side note, we've talked about divorce a couple of times. They are some of the most complicated transactions because you're supposed to be keeping both people's needs and wants into account. You're not supposed to have a favorite, and it's a hard thing to do, especially in domestic abuse situations and stuff like that. But let's keep going. And that was the whole story for that one. So yeah, divorce situations are really hard. You have to handle them really in a completely different manner than you would most real estate transactions. And it's a good thing to just try to keep an arm's distance from them and really focus on professionalism, communicating effectively, explaining stuff, and then having documentation showing that you've done all of that. But worst buyer was super shady the whole time we were looking for houses. Something was off about him, but his wife and kids were super excited and sweet, so it kind of balanced him out in my eyes. Finally found them a new construction house. As we were doing the home inspection, he told me he didn't want the lender to do a verification of employment because he was using per diem as a stated income and didn't want his employer to find out he was buying a home locally and lose his per diem. Another huge big piece of this is don't lie about anything. Don't try to manipulate anything. If it takes you a couple extra years to buy a house or months, to do it in a way that's not manipulative of your taxes or anything like that, it's just going to be worth it. Once you start playing games like this, it just makes your life harder. What if his employer does find out he has less per diem and it makes it so he qualifies for less house and it's harder for them to stay in that home? Like, that's just a really hard situation that you just don't want to be in. And I don't think people really think about that. They think it's going to be easy. They're going to figure it out going on in the future. Don't buy a house unless your last 2 months would have worked for you to be able to afford that house. Your last 2 years, really. Really have a good backup plan. I didn't mean to be so aggressive on that, but let's keep going. I told the loan officer what he told me. We were able to work past it eventually. Day of closing, loan officer called me right before we were headed in. They'd pulled credit again. He'd bought a car. He had everything he owned in a moving van, and someone else had already rented his apartment. I paid out of pocket for storage for their things for a month and had a personal conversation with the property manager and got them into another apartment just because I couldn't stand the thought of his kids having to suffer, and then he walked away from them. He called me about 6 months later, wanted me to help him again, and I did not return his call. That buyer situation is really hard, especially because there's just multiple layers of like complexity in that buyer. A lot of buyers that you see like that you start having just really simple problems even when you're looking at houses, they can turn into something like this where every important part of the process is them trying to sabotage it in one way and maybe not even meaning to. Somebody who's got a bank that's 16 hours away, or people that are wanting to do an inspection but aren't wanting to spend any money on it. I think that's one of the biggest things is that people don't want to spend money on a lot of buying real estate. But me and my wife spent $1,100 on all of our inspections, and we found out about a bunch of stuff. And I have people all the time who don't want to spend money on a mold test or anything like that. They buy the house, maybe there's some mold in it, and they're like, well, why didn't we know about this? Why didn't the inspector catch it? And it's like, well, the inspector can't locate mold unless they do a mold test. So just things to be aware of, but that would be a really, really hard buyer. But on to the next. It's client story number 3, and it is by Creepy Fart for You. Not my story, but I can tell you about the aftermath. I picked up a foreclosure 4 years ago. I am the second owner. It was a new condo community in 2006 in a shore beach rental community, so I assumed the idea was to make money on the increase in equity and the hot market back then. 2006 was a wild time. Apparently, original owner was a mortgage broker, and he and another guy bought 3 units. His main one is the one I bought. His partner, who I don't see around much, still has a condo. And the other one they supposedly put in his mother-in-law's name, and I think they lost that one too. They were priced in the range of $450K. I bought it for $217 almost 10 years later. When cleaning, found some mail that said the dude actually owed over $600K, so maybe he got a second mortgage. Anyway, I think he's still a mortgage broker, hopefully a little wiser. Over the 5 years, it sat empty and deteriorated. Let's go back just for 1 second. This is why you got to be careful taking on all that debt. Everybody's always telling you, leverage your butt off, buy a house, refinance it, take that extra cash and go and buy another house. But that's the problem. That's the problem with FTX and all of it. The second that the market turns, if you're too over leveraged, the house can just come crumbling down so quickly. It all seems super nice and good when prices are going up, and it seems like you don't even have to think about the investments, but it will at some point really come to harm you. The reason people like Warren Buffett or other great investors are so successful is not because they don't take risks at all, but they take calculated risks understanding the possible ways that the market can move. And in 2006, I guarantee you all the real estate agents were saying the market's going to keep going up. I don't know what would change it. Just like in 2023, all the agents are saying these high interest rates is the best thing. I'm not saying the market's going to go up or down, but really be pondering if you buy a house, does it do what you need it to do? And do you have a backup plan just in case the market doesn't do what you want it to do? And does your job, you feel like, sustain it in a way that you'd be comfortable with you and your family? Another huge piece of real estate mortgages that nobody talks about is the stress of having too high of a mortgage and the stress that puts on you and your family. But, sorry, let's keep going. Over the 5 years, it sat empty and deteriorated, and the roof leaked, so it was cosmetically bad, but no major damage. During the cleanup, I found what I guess was a note to his daughter, wrote telling him to cheer up and smile as her and mommy worried about him stressing out. And they still loved him. Kind of made me see the other side of the foreclosure mess. Yeah, that's the huge piece of it. Nobody thinks about the extra level of stress of trying to be an investor, being a cool guy is going to put on you and your family in your relationship with your children. One other thing was most of the bathroom doors had holes in them, like someone punched them. Not sure if it was him or the renters. So it was kind of sucky to be profiting off of someone else's mistakes, but I love the condo. Yeah, this is one of those things that it's other people's mistakes that do make it so that you can profit, but you're not trying to take advantage of people, and that's the biggest focus you need to have, is I'm trying to do this in a way that benefits me without hurting others. And I think especially in real estate, that's just super important to really be aware of is that investing's not a bad thing. Owning rentals isn't trying to take advantage of people. But trying to take advantage of people is trying to take advantage of people. And there's a subtle but very key difference between them and the way that you communicate people and the plans that you have. Okay, we're going to go to our last story, agent number 3. I had a seller who I met that disclosed to me that his property had a remediated sinkhole on his property. Okay, no big deal. I've sold them before. We filled out the paperwork and I asked for documentation. He told me that he would have to look for it and he will send it. I reached out the next day to schedule photos and asked again for the paperwork. He sent it to me the next day, but all that he sent were receipts for a cement mixer and thousands of dollars of cement. When I inquired, I came to find out that he remediated the sinkhole under the home himself. He was in no way, shape, or form qualified to do this work. He rented a machine to drill under his home until he got to the void. Then he rented a cement mixer and bought pallets of ready mixed cement to pour into the void until it would not take any more. I let him know that definitely does not qualify as remediated, and he promptly fired him after that. This is another one of those really hard client situations. People like this, in their mind, they're thinking, okay, I solved the problem. I don't know why you're concerned. That it filled the void. It's just as simple as that. Especially a lot of older people think that is the fact. But this is why you ask for proof on everything too. Let's say you were a buyer and you heard about the sinkhole. You need to ask, okay, send me the remediation documentation that you have. And if they don't have remediation documentation, or they're acting real shisty about it, or like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, you need to be asking some much larger questions. And it's just something to be super aware of. Sellers don't have realistic expectations. Even if the agent's super honest and the seller's not, it can still put you in a pinch if you buy that home. And also why it's important to maybe get 2 or 3 opinions on stuff. But doesn't matter. That was just kind of a crazy story. I wanted to bring it up. And this is a weird thing that can happen. You know, you can buy a house and you can see that one side of the roof is slanting. You need to figure out why that side of the roof is slanting. And maybe it's not slanting enough and you're like, well, whatever. But it's going to be house to house. It's going to be situation to situation. But just always be aware there's crazy stuff like this that happens all the time. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope this gives you a little bit more of an idea of some of the situations you can run into buying or selling a home. Make sure that you're really being a smart person when you're selecting a real estate agent, when you're selecting a lender, and find people that are competent. I can't emphasize that enough. But these are the horror stories for today. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Other than that, thanks for even just watching my channel. Thank you. Hope you have a great day. Bye.